Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky. And today I want to talk about the Idaho 4 case. I want to talk about the idea that two Washington State University police officers located and identified Bryan Kohberger and his white Hyundai Elantra as soon as November the 29th. Now, I touched on this in my last video, and there were a lot of comments. There was a lot of discussion in the comments section about how this could have happened. There were a lot of comments about Brett Payne testifying that he didn't hear anything about this information until December 20th. So today, I want to elaborate on that, and I want to go back into this a little more in depth because the math ain't mathing. How did Brett Payne not hear that Washington State University police had found Bryan Kohberger's car on November 29th until 3 weeks later on December 20th? Now, I'm not saying that Brett Payne lied on the stand. I'm not accusing Brett Payne of anything. I'm just saying that when you look at all of the information, it doesn't add up. You know, if you read Brett Payne's testimony, and you can watch it too, but if you read it, then you can see Ann Taylor taking him down a road. She wants to know when he found out that Washington State University police had a lead on Bryan Kohberger. She wants to know how soon it was that he was able to look at phone records from Bryan Kohberger. Because Ann Taylor is trying to understand how two Washington State University police had located Bryan Kohberger's car and already identified him, but that Brett Payne, the lead investigator, didn't hear anything about it until 3 weeks later, supposedly on December the 20th. The way that the PCA reads, and this is just my interpretation, I know people will say the PCA is not the Bible, it's not the end all, they'll downplay this PCA. But the truth is, it's an important document. This is the paperwork that law enforcement, the government, uses to take someone's freedom away. So it is important. It needs to be accurate, and it needs to be understandable. So the way that the PCA reads is that Washington State University police they physically locate Bryan Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra in the parking lot of his apartment complex in Pullman, Washington, just before 1 in the morning on November the 29th. This is only 2 weeks after the Idaho 4 crimes occur. Now, when this Washington State University officer physically locates Bryan Kohberger's car just before 1 a.m., he runs his tags and he gets all of his information. Now, he also looks at his driver's license. And from his driver's license information, as well as his photo, this WSU officer believes that Bryan Kohberger matches the description that Dylan Mortensen gave investigators. He's over 5'10", he's 185 pounds, and he has bushy eyebrows. So he does match the description. Now, a lot of men matched that description. I match that description. So anyway, as you read through the PCA further, it states that upon further investigation, now this is right after they locate his car on November the 29th. So right after they locate his car on the 29th, it says upon further investigation, as in further than they've already investigated. Now, this is when they discover that Bryan Kohberger was pulled over by Latah County Sheriff's Department, and he was pulled over for a seatbelt violation. This happened on August the 21st, and during the course of that traffic stop, Bryan Kohberger gave this deputy his telephone number. Now, something that's odd about this traffic stop is that this happened on August the 21st, but they do not want to release that body cam footage. So it makes you wonder why. They're saying that it could affect the investigation in the Idaho 4 case. So, how would a traffic stop on August the 21st affect the Idaho 4 investigation? I mean, this happened months before the crimes occurred. So is it possible that maybe Bryan Kohberger maybe was talking to the officer and mentioned that he had two phones? Maybe he told the officer, I have two cell phones. Which number do you want? Maybe he told the deputy that he was going to visit a friend at the University of Idaho. We don't know what happened during this traffic stop, but it seems odd that they wouldn't release this body cam footage from a traffic stop on August the 21st. But we do know that this is how investigators obtained Bryan Kohberger's telephone number just after November 29th. Now, they probably already had his cell phone number because I'm sure his information was all entered into the Washington State University database. Since after the 29th, law enforcement would know that Bryan Kohberger was a student at Washington State University. So the PCA reads as though they found the car on the 29th. They identified Bryan Kohberger by running his tags. They further investigated Bryan Kohberger and realized that he had given a Latah County Sheriff's Department deputy his telephone number during a traffic stop. And then they ran an electronic database query on his phone to determine that his service was through AT&T. So the PCA, and this is just my interpretation, reads as though this all happened just after November the 29th. When Ann Taylor is questioning Brett Payne on the stand, and this is just my opinion, she's trying to understand how Washington State University police located Bryan Kohberger's car and identified him on November 29th, but Brett Payne didn't know anything about it until December 20th. She's also trying to establish a timeline of when they began getting Bryan Kohberger's cell phone information. Because like I said, in the PCA, it reads as though they found his vehicle and identified him on the 29th and then began investigating further. And that's how they discovered that Bryan Kohberger's cell phone had service with AT&T. Now, something I wish Ann Taylor would have done right at this time was ask Brett Payne when the vehicle expert, on what date this expert changed the dates of the Hyundai and added 2014, 15, and 16. Now, I mean, maybe it is possible that Washington State University found Bryan Kohberger's car, got all of his information, and started an investigation into his phone on around the 29th. Maybe they gave that information to the FBI rather than Moscow Police Department. And that's the reason that Brett Payne was never made aware of that. But that really just doesn't make sense. He's the lead investigator for Moscow Police Department. So it wouldn't make sense for them to keep this information from Brett Payne. Maybe it was just a breakdown in communication. Maybe it is possible that he was not made aware of this information. But then that leads us to the question of why? Why wouldn't they make the lead investigator aware that they have a person of interest on November the 29th? I mean, this is a major investigation. This is a quadruple homicide. 4 young adults lost their lives in a very brutal manner. So this is a major investigation with multiple agencies working together. You have the FBI, you have the state police, you have local police, and whoever else is working in this investigation, all working toward one common goal. The focus is to find a suspect, find whoever committed this crime in a timely manner. That's the goal. So it seems odd that all of these people would be working so hard to find a suspect, and they have a person of interest on November the 29th and fail to tell Brett Payne about it. I mean, Brett Payne's not aware that they have found a lead in Pullman, Washington, that this individual drives exactly the same car that they're looking for. He matches the description given to law enforcement by an eyewitness, and he lives just 10 minutes away from the crime scene. And Brett Payne doesn't know anything about this individual. That just doesn't make any sense at all. Now, something else that came up in the comments on my last video was the be on the lookout for the 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantra. So when they put this be on the lookout out to the public on December the 7th, they included 2 stock photos of 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantras. So why didn't they just use the photos that the vehicle expert used to identify the car? I mean, if you have a picture of the actual vehicle, why wouldn't you use those photos? I mean, that's like having a photo of the actual suspect, but instead on the wanted poster, they put a picture of someone who just looks like the suspect rather than the actual suspect itself. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, if you're looking for something, show us what you're looking for. In my opinion, all of the video footage of this white Hyundai Elantra could prove to be very useful at trial. If all that you have is video of a white Hyundai Elantra, driving around the area and driving around the city, then unless that white Hyundai Elantra ends up at the King Roadhouse, then I think it's going to be hard to prove that this car was actually at this crime scene. Unless this car ends up at 1122 King Road, or there's video of somebody getting out of this car in the area and walking over to 1122 King Road, that's going to be hard to prove that this white Hyundai was actually at the crime scene. I think it's also going to be very hard to prove that all of this camera footage that they've stitched together is the exact same white Hyundai. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that in court. And I know that they're using cell phone records to kind of, back that up. But in my opinion, I mean, you can have video footage of this white Hyundai Elantra driving in between these two cities and all over. But if that car doesn't end up at 1122 King Road, then how do they prove that it was part of the crimes? Now, if they do have footage of Bryan Kohberger's car, and they can prove that it was Bryan Kohberger's car around the King Roadhouse, then that's definitely going to raise some red flags for me, because he said that he wasn't anywhere near that area. So if they do have video footage or photographs of Bryan Kohberger's car around the King Roadhouse, then to me that's suspicious, because he said all along that that's not where he was at. So we're going to do a few videos about the comments on my last video, because there's still a few that I want to get to. There was a lot of really great discussions going on in that comment section, and I want to share them here. So I'm going to come back tomorrow, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. We're going to talk about why Bryan Kohberger was never brought in for questioning after he became a person of interest on November the 29th. We're also going to talk about why law enforcement does not want to release the body cam footage from the August 21st traffic stop where Bryan Kohberger was pulled over for a seatbelt violation. So we're going to talk about these things. I'm going to come back tomorrow. We're going to talk about all these things. So thanks for hanging out with me today. I really do appreciate it. And if you liked my video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. I hope that you all had an amazing day. We'll see you next time.